I want to talk with you today about this idea of how do you transform communities? And I'll start with the word empower. I really have an issue with this word, even though I am told that I'm supposed to discuss re-empower. Let me tell you my problem with empowering. It basically says that we believe that we have power to give to people. Let me help you with this idea. People already have power. It is your role to come in and serve as a catalyst to help them recognize the power that exists within them. And so often as nonprofit organizations, we think that people need a savior. They go to church, synagogues, temples, and all kinds of other places for that. They don't need us to do that. What they need for us to do is partner with them. We only come in to walk with people, not to save them. And so I'm going to challenge you as you say this word, empowering people, because people already have it. And so I want you to take a look at this video, if I can make it work, because we had some challenges earlier. I want you to watch this. Y'all, these ads from YouTube. You're like, really? Okay, let me make it big so you can see this. And I just want you to pay attention to this. What do you notice about collaboration? I'm not going to play the whole video, but I wanted you to look at this. I am fascinated with starlings. Not only are they beautiful birds, they can also be a problem for a neighborhood that they are flying above because of what they may drop. So they do have some issues. We won't talk about that as collaboration. But what did you notice about the birds as they were flying together? What came to mind? Yes. Yes. So they're creating space for one another. They're creating place for one another, that there is a place, a role that everyone has that's in this group, but there is space for everyone to show up in the totality of who they are. What else do you notice about the starlings? Yes. Yeah, so you didn't see birds going, get out of my way. Or that birds are knocking each other out and running into each other, that they were able to be in synchronicity with one another. Yes. Anything else? Yes, in the back.
I saw acting with the shape of the stage. We saw elections here where they said got evenly and they separated out. It was free for them to do their thing.
Yes.
No with other birds.
Yes.
Out, and there was no about it.
Yes, so they were able to be agile and flexible as needed. Why is it that the birds have this down and we don't? It's amazing that in nonprofit management, you will hear all the time people say, well, it's my program and it's my organization, and not thinking about the people that we're doing this for. We don't center always the people that we're working with. What would it look like if we actually decided to flow together, recognizing that each of us are in this space and place for such a time as this, but also recognizing that we have to give grace to one another. One of the things that's fascinating about starlings is that when a group gets sick, a whole entire group, it can be one bird, an entire group will drop down and stay with that bird until it gets well, and then they join the rest of the group. What would it look like in community if we did the exact same thing? That when someone gets ill in our community, in our ecosystem, as Tracy talked about, if someone got ill, that we were okay with dropping down, spending time with them, and then getting back up to soar. Why they are so successful is the fact that they're in community. The wind can really begin to help them soar because it's so many of them coming together. What would it look like if we actually decided to soar with each other? We could really make some transformation and possibly leave some stuff on the ground like they do. All right, let's move on to the next slide. Okay. Here we go. So I want to have you really think about this ideal of collaboration. We talk about it a lot in our nonprofits, but are we really serious about this ideal of working together? Are we really thinking about ways in which we could partner with each other well? And one of the things that I don't think we do well as nonprofits is really this ideal of partnership. One of the things I would encourage you to do is really define what that means for you. You have different types of partners. Not everyone is a partner. There are folks that are information sharing. Y'all send emails to each other. That's not necessarily a partner. There are people that may attend your trainings and participate in that, but how do you move them? Have you really thought about in your organization, what's the trajectory to move someone from being information sharing to actually being an advocate and ambassador for your work? And we have plans for our clients, but do we really have plans for the organizations that we work with and partner with in community to move them through this trajectory? Just like you have a gift pyramid that allows you to look at how your sponsors, you have a title sponsor and you have people that come under that. What does that look like for your partners and how do you work with them? And really thinking about what's the goal with your partners? It should not just be, we're going to get funding together, we're going to serve more people. There really should be a goal that you have. Your donors are partners. What does it look like to create a trajectory for them in this work? And then as we think about what partnering looks like, it's really an opportunity for us to depend upon each other, just like you saw those birds doing, but it's an opportunity for innovation. What does it really mean when we can learn from one another and create that space and place for us to begin to influence one another, learn about what we're doing, but more importantly, how do we create impact together? And so I'm going to share with you some lessons in this space that I've had for years in working in nonprofit management. One of the things that has been a big lesson for me is that resources are in the people. This is one of my favorite charts because it talks about the forms of currency. We don't think about currency existing in people. There is wealth in every human being that we come in contact with. So whether that's their relationships and their social capital, which we'll talk about a little bit later, whether it's the materials that are around them in their community, I don't care how destitute a place is or what a person is going through, they have this level of wealth. And so think about the spiritual wealth that they have. We always focus on the financial capital, but we don't focus on all these other elements that people bring. And I want to say this, you have this wealth in you too. So often we talk about lack and look at things from a perspective of what we don't have, but we don't pay attention to what we actually have within us. The people you come in contact with are wealthy. Lesson 2, there is power in the relationships. I love this idea of social capital. It's what my dissertation research is on. And what social capital really is, it's about networks, relationships, associations. There was this gentleman who saw parents talking, his name was Hannafin in the early 1900s, and he said they were sharing resources, and he termed it social capital. And so the term has gone through an iteration where Robert Putnam, who I adore, I'm an academic groupie, and I followed this man around when he was in Dallas. He's brilliant. But in his book, Bowling Alone, he talked about people don't bowl together. He said that at one time you would see all these bowling leagues. And I remember as a kid, my aunt would take me on these bowling league trips that they would have. And at the time, I had no idea what they were doing. They were sharing social capital. They would say to each other, hey, you need a job? Call me. I've got a place to hook you up with. You need a church to go to? Come go to church with me. Putnam says that social capital has actually been declining, especially when you think about the pandemic, because many of us isolated and went inside and we really didn't think about our ecosystem and social networks. He says that communities that have high social capital have lower crime. Why would crime be have any relationship or correlation to relationships? Why would a community suffer less crime? Yes. Yes, yes. The other thing that he says is that communities that have high social capital, people vote. Why is that? Why would voting have any correlation to social capital? You're invested. For me, I have a group of bullies that are friends. On Facebook, they put up pictures of themselves of them voting. And then they started doing this thing seriously where they were taking their kids to vote. Well, my daughter is an adult, so I was thinking about, well, if I get a strange kid and take a picture and go, look at me with them, people will go, God, she's so cool. She's picking up kids, taking them to vote with her. That's what really encourages me, is watching my friends say, this is important. And it's important to me as well. So Putnam says that when people vote, there's high social capital. Crime is lower, but he also says that educational outcomes are higher in communities where there's high social capital. Why would it impact our education? Yes. You also have access to resources where people will talk to each other and say, hey, my kid needs tutors. Just like Tracy talked about having tutors, and that was a part of her ecosystem. The same thing happens for our students as well, as that when they have that kind of support, they can thrive. And so social capital is very important. I don't think we think intentionally about our networks and how they can be used to move the needle in our communities and make an impact. And there are several types of social capital. I'm only going to cover 2 today, but there's one that's called bonding. That's easy. That's when we connect to people that are just like us. So nothing wrong with that. But this is the problem. When you're around people that are just like you are sharing the same homogeneous information. What we need to move to is this ideal of what's called bridging social capital. How do we connect to people that are different, not just race, but ideology? Gallup had research that demonstrated that when people don't find folks who think the same way they do politically, they isolate and they will stay to themselves. That's a division and polarization that we're seeing now. It's because we're uncomfortable with people who think differently than we do. What would happen if we allowed ourselves to have moments of cognitive dissonance where you are faced with an idea that challenges you, and instead of retreating and running, you say, let me wrestle with this. Could there be some truth and validity in it? Instead of going, they're wrong, I'm moving away. That is what contributes to us having polarization. We have got to be more intentional about not only having the bonding social capital, but the bridging social capital. Lesson 3, you got to know the power that already exists in the community. I love this model. This is by a scholar named Tara Yosso, Y-O-S-S-O. Her work is phenomenal, and she talks about first-generation college students. And what she says is that when these students get ready to go to college, we often look at them from a deficit point of view and go, they don't have these resources. And what she's discovered is that all of these resources these young people bring, they bring aspirational capital. They bring navigational capital where they're able to negotiate and find the resources that they need to be successful. What if we looked at all of our communities as having this kind of wealth, that the language, the stories, the people actually have resources within them, and that all that we're doing is providing the gaps instead of coming in to save? It's an amazing model that we should really begin to think about framing our work around. The other thing that I've learned is in every community, there are assets. I love asset-based community development because what it does is it forces us to really think about all these different categories in our communities. There are institutions, there are individuals that have power. We sometimes don't look at our young people as resources except to do social media. They are so much more than that. How do we look at our more seasoned folks with gray hair and begin to start seeing the wisdom that they could bring in these spaces? But they also talk about stories. And so often when we go into communities, we don't listen to the stories of the people that are there and the lived experience because we read a book or look at some data and think we have the answers. And that's dangerous. The collective is necessary. Network weaving is something I love. It is by a lady, you can look up her work, June Holly. And June Holly is one of my dear friends and a mentor of mine who really taught me more about this concept. And it's how do you move the needle using your relationships? So going beyond social capital, going beyond looking at the assets that exist in a community and beginning to look at how do groups of people come together to solve for issues. St. David's Foundation is doing a great job here in Central Texas with bringing this concept to solve for social determinants of health. And so there are different stages of network development that we want to pay attention to. And there's not a right way or wrong way to do this, but ultimately our goal should be how do we grow our networks where we are using information to make a difference in our communities. The other lesson that I've learned is communities are not monolithic. Everybody is not the same. And recognizing that there is diversity within communities that are very homogeneous. We have to recognize that everyone has multiple identities. I am not only a Black woman, but I'm also from Louisiana, the Deep South. I am a person of faith. All of those identities make up who I am. And if I can learn that and pay attention to it, why don't we do that for the people that we work with in community and recognizing that they are more than what they look like. They are more than the experience that they're in at that time. I'll pass the collection plate later. In a minute, I'll go, the doors of the church open. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is think about who is missing from your network, because so often we think about who's there and that's important. But I want you to pay attention to who's missing, who can inform the work that you do even more so. And then number 7 is pay attention to the power of not just data. Make sure the stories that people are telling you complement the data. Because I remember being in a situation in South Dallas where I thought people needed this technology. And I sat there in a meeting and the community was looking at me going, no, this is important, but there's some other things that are even more important than this. So when the stories match the data, you're on to something. Pay attention to that. Power, recognize your power and privilege as a nonprofit. You come in with power in the sense of you've got resources. And so recognize that people will sometimes do this, which does not mean they agree. There is a difference between agreement and compliance. I will nod my head at you because you have something I need. It does not mean I agree with you or like you. So be mindful of that. And then my final thought, this is my favorite quote. It says, go to the people, live with them, love them, learn from them, work with them, start with what they have, build on what they know. And in the end, when the work is done, the people will rejoice and they will say, not you, not me, not your nonprofit. We have done it ourselves. That is the ultimate goal. We are not here to save people. We are here to support people where they walk away and feel like they did it. And all we did was serve as a catalyst to bring that power that was already in them out of them. Shameless plug, get my book. I'll be selling it out front. But please reach out if there's anything I can do to support you, because if you're trying to help community, then I want to help you make sure people get the resources that they need. So thank you. I want to